Today we're talking about the interplay between NE, Extroverted Intuition, and NI, Introverted Intuition, as the sixth function, known as the Critic, for INFPs and INTPs. I'll share my own personal metaphor for how I understand this clash, what it feels like for me, and how we can navigate this tension. Let's talk about understanding NI as a critic. So first, introverted intuition, in the context of John Beebe's model, often feels constructing, critical, this Senex voice that is always telling us what we can't do or why it won't work out. Introverted intuition in general is like, picture it as this laser beam, intensely focusing on one idea while parsing the other ones and saying, this is where everything is going. When NI takes over for me, it feels like, this is a bit wild, I know, but it feels like as if I've been impaled in the sternum and there's this long chain and like I'm just being pulled or gripping me. I can't escape from it. I'm completely focused on going in one direction. And I don't have my normal way of interacting with the world and ideas, which I'll talk about in a second when we get into NE. This experience is really, really constricting. It leaves me feeling like maybe I'm moving, but I can't escape it. Like it's a tractor beam. It really does feel claustrophobic. And it's not just a feeling, like it blocks creativity. It leads to analysis paralysis. I'm just overthinking, like mulling over different ideas. And with everything, though, recognizing this pattern is the first step in managing it, right? You can't manage what you don't have awareness of. But let's talk about the role of NE, Extroverted Intuition, as well. And let's contrast how NE works for INPs. So just in general, extroverted intuition thrives on possibilities, on opportunities. It's expansive in nature. You can also see just how I'm talking about it right now. We have a natural tendency to appreciate the first and second function, at least within our cognitive function stack. I've done a lot of work with introverted intuition. I do a lot of self-hypnosis and metaphor work and being okay with my unconscious mind, but it's so conflicting in nature of taking idea space and expanding out with extroverted intuition, exploring all these different possibilities, or allowing it to marinate, allowing it to rise to the top and getting an insight. It feels too slow for me to do introverted intuition. But extroverted intuition acts as this like kaleidoscope. It's generating endless ideas and combinations, different possibilities. It's about, again, exploration and creativity in the standard sense of taking things and mashing them together, seeing what happens. Oh, you're so creative. I know there are many different forms of creativity, but that's the one that is normally in most of our minds. There's an excitement that comes with discovering a new idea, as opposed to this sense of like transformation or crystallizing that often comes with introverted intuition, from my understanding. And he wants to send you on all these different directions, expanding your thoughts and helping you connect the dots in this like jumping off fireworks kind of style in ways that maybe you haven't considered before. Introverted intuition is also helping you reframe, but it's going meta to it. It's like zooming up maybe and looking above and seeing like how things are plotted out and where they are going in a less hectic, chaotic way. When NI's influence becomes too strong on INFPs and likely INTPs too, it feels like all of these ideas that we normally have is getting like restricted. So normally, as someone who prefers extroverted intuition, it's like we're filled with all these vibrant ideas and possibilities and what ifs. How could we do this? It's like a very excitable function and quite optimistic too, just as a function itself. And yet when we bring in introverted intuition in a way that is not intentional, then it feels like we have this critical lens saying that like, well, it can't work and it'll never work. And this is the meaning of all the things. And this is why everything is pointing to you being incapable of doing the thing. Or as another expression, how it comes out for me, bringing in extroverted sensing too, our seventh function. It's like in a physical settings, it often comes out where I can't do this thing, or I can't move in this direction, like physical claustrophobia, or something bad is going to happen in a physical sense, and that is the only option. That's the only way it can happen. Like my normal ability to see all these different possibilities and potentials and different ways that it could go, and it could be like this, could be like this, is like, no. And it's always in a bad way. It's never in an optimistic sense, which is one highlight, one aspect about it being in the ego dystonic, the 5th through 8th functions. And it creates a lot of frustration and a feeling of being stuck. This internal clash of being pushed outward or pulled to all these different ideas, as well as being pulled inward in a way that is confining, can lead to anxiety, especially with NI, because usually it's predicting about the future, about how things are going to pan out, whereas NE is a bit more lateral and timeless. It's kind of like bouncing around to all different timelines. Remember, it's a critical voice. It's the mystic scrying and saying, this is why, this is where things are going in idea space, which is something that normally we thrive in, but when you bring in introverted intuition in the wrong way, that's what happens. So I want to share with you a tip, a technique that really helps me managing with these conflicting states. There are many different approaches, but this is one that I do when I'm in it and I realize that it's happening. When I sense this pressure of my mind is just chomping on an idea endlessly, it's like on a bone, it's stuck, and I can't let it go. When it feels like that, or that I'm getting pulled in this tractor beam or by this chain from my sternum in a very violent way, what I can do is I can transform it through visualization. This is something that we can all do, messing with what's called submodalities, the ways that you visualize or sense in your auditory, kinesthetic, your taste, your smell. You can play with the little building blocks of reality. So when I feel this sensation, I point to where I feel it, and then I imagine taking that image out and putting it in mental space in front of you and stretching it, like imagining like a touch screen. And if I just stretch it out, maybe put it above me, bring in this sense of curiosity, I instantly can start to imagine flourishing, imagine creativity. And this method really helps me create room for extroverted intuition to roam, to play, instead of feeling like I can only see this one path, like tunnel vision. I'm so focused on this one thing. So it's a matter of expanding out the image and usually putting it above me, moving my eyes back and forth, accessing different visual construction, visual recreation, remembering, and playing around with mental space is really helpful for me. You could also imagine dissolving the color, changing the color, pulling it out, shifting it. You can shake your body, just get into a different physical state. There are tons of different ways that we can go about it, but this act of visualizing the expansion creates a sense of relief for me, opening up new possibilities where there were barriers and boundaries before. It allows creative ideas to flutter freely, unrestrained by the weight of that pulling, the gravity of the situation, perhaps, or the gravity of my ideas. So let's break it down into actual steps that you can take. So the first one is to recognize the sensation. If you don't recognize it, you're stuck in it. So if you recognize it afterwards, then just notice that. Notice the feeling, notice the sensation, notice what you were doing, how you were acting, what you were thinking, and work on closing that time between when it happened and when you realized it happened. And eventually you start to realize it more in real time. So anyway, start by paying attention to when you feel that intense pressure or the sensation, the impalement, the pulling force, whatever it is for you. You got to figure out what that is. But that's how it works for me. And acknowledge it as a sign that maybe your NI is becoming too critical. Maybe you're not in a resourceful state. And visualize. Take a moment to visualize what that sensation looks like for you. Maybe what shape does it take? Is it a heavy weight? Is it a dark cloud? What does it look like? Understand the metaphor or the different, the style of it. How is it coming about for you? The sounds, textures. If it's a sound, play with the volume, change the voice, turn the speakers around, move it to the other side. Play around with mental space. And this is something that you are very good at as an NP. You can play with these things, but you just got to have awareness and then do it, right? And also do what I was talking about stretching and expanding. Use your imagination to stretch the image outward, if that works for you. See, if you don't like it, you can put it back. If it helps to shrink it down, you can do that too. But for me, it helps to expand it. So for you, maybe if that's the case, imagine that you're pinching and pulling like a touch screen. You got the image, right? Feel the sensation transform as you create more space for it. Does it feel better? Does it feel worse? Play around with it. And then reflect. After you've visualized it, after you've understood maybe how it comes about in a kinesthetic sensation, the colors, the texture, the weight, shape, and you've played around with it, then take time to reflect on how you feel, right? Notice if you feel relief after doing that. And once you've done that, you can put yourself into a more resourceful state. And as you practice this technique, you can start to implement it into your own strategies, and you can find ways to help you shake it off or emerge more easily into a more resourceful state. And actually, just by doing this process, you are allowing your extroverted intuition to interact with the metaphor that introverted intuition has come up with. And you can actively transform and transition from that negative state into a space of comfort and exploration. And if this resonates with you, then please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments, like, what your metaphor is. How do you deal with introverted intuition? How does it come about for you? It might be helpful for other people to understand. And if you want a deeper dive into what introverted intuition itself is, not with all that negative baggage coming from it being in our critic slot, then you can check out this video over here and get a deep dive. Feel like have fun. Peace.